say you're fine, but I can see right through. You're holding your secrets for way too long. This can't keep going on. With every lie, they keep on hurting you, getting away with everything they do. This can't keep going on. No, we're gonna find them, and I'm gonna fight for you. They better start hiding. We'll be running with the lions, lions. We'll be running with the lions, lions. They can't run, they can't hide. We won't stop until they're down. We'll be running with the lions, lions.
Well, hello everyone and happy Sunday. I'm so excited for you guys to join me today on Gloves Off because today is a really exciting episode. For those of you who have been watching, you know the show is about our guests who are stripping off their ego, their metaphorical gloves, and really taking their unique journey in life and being their authentic selves. So the funny thing is that the idea for the show really came to me because I took my surgical gloves off to be my more authentic self. And then I just realized that I have done a lot of activities in my life that require gloves. I used to race Porsches and I had racing gloves. And then a couple of years ago, I started doing martial arts, which requires also placing some gloves on. And so I love today's episode because I have my Krav Maga instructor here from California who we're going to be interviewing. And for those of you who have been watching, again, I want to thank you for all the wonderful comments and for tuning in every week. But before we get started today, we are going to have a bit about my platinum sponsor, Elevated CPA. Nobody likes tax time because the bottom line is, we know that death and taxes are inevitable. And it's funny that they are in the same category. But I have to say that it really depends on the type of accountant that you decide to work with. Mine in particular, I use Elevated CPA, and it has been a wonderful experience for me because they take care of all this stuff for me. I don't feel like I'm in the dark about anything, and I know that they have my back, so I don't have to worry about things during tax time. All right. So I'm so excited to get into this today. So I basically moved from Florida where I was already starting to do my Krav Maga training. And I moved here probably 3 months or two to 3 months before I was about to get my black belt. So I had to get involved in a whole different school, which could be a little disconcerting when you're so close to getting your black belt. But I was met with such a warm welcome from Success Martial Arts. And, they all felt like family very, very quickly. So I want to introduce Dr. Micah Hale because he has so many things that are so interesting. Not only is he a world champion martial artist, he has his own farm and he has a company that he consults for. So he's involved in so many different interesting things that probably don't look like they even go together. But that's what I love when you get to deep dive on people and find out what makes them tick. So I'm going to bring on Micah Hale. Hello. Thank you for being on the show today.
Hi, Vasundar. It's nice to see you again. Thank you for having me.
Yes. Yes, I know. I love it. We actually trained you were training for your second degree, Krav black belt, while I was training for my first degree just a couple of months ago. And, it was such an amazing experience. And I would say that every time I come in and, for a class, I feel like I learn a little bit more about you. And one of the things that has always stuck out of my mind that you've always said, and I don't know a lot more about the story, was that you grew up fighting because you were bullied, right? So can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I grew up in a very good family, but times were different. We didn't have a lot of money, and so we lived in neighborhoods without a lot of money, and there tends to be a lot of fights in those kinds of neighborhoods. And I had my brother alongside of me, who's a year older than me, but I was just probably in at least one fight a week for the first 8 years of my life.
Wow. That is, I mean, that's a lot to handle. And how old were you at this time?
From about 7 years old until about 11 years old.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
So you had no formal training at that point, right? So these were just street fights.
No formal training, just training with fighting with my brother.
Well, I don't know. That might classify as some kind of formal training. But it's interesting because I'm sure that background in your life got you interested probably in martial arts. So when did that happen?
I'd always been interested in martial arts my whole life, but we didn't have the money for it. So my dad got us into wrestling, and so I wrestled for the majority of my young adult life and childhood, and that was my gateway into martial arts was wrestling.
Okay, well, and it's interesting because, Krav has so many different things in it. It's a little mixture. For those of actually, would you mind actually telling our audience what Krav Maga is? Because a lot of people don't know. I find myself explaining to people all the time.
Sure. At its roots, Krav Maga is the most basic instinctual self-defense uh, combat art in the world. It simplifies self-defense into very violent counterattacks that end the confrontation as soon as possible. That's what Krav Maga is. It was started by Israeli special forces in the 60s, I believe, and then it's just expanded since then. The brand of Krav Maga that we do, Warrior Krav Maga, was developed by Grandmaster Clark and some of his associates, and they've just grown it into something that's continually refined. But it's a refined version of self-defense.
And I have to say that that was what got me interested. So when I first started, it was in Jacksonville, as you know. I trained with Master Jimenez first. Actually, it was Master Smith. I mean, I met, both of them, but Master Smith, who we'll have on the show one day soon. So I was doing kickboxing. And I loved it because at that point I was going through a divorce and I just had some serious aggression issues. And I was like, I got to do something to get this out in a healthy way because whatever I'm feeling probably isn't the way to go. So I started the kickboxing and it was great. But one day I was there late enough where they were doing a Krav class and I thought, I don't even know what this is. And so I just stayed for the class and just liked it. And I thought, I'm watching these big men and these small women. And that's when Master Jimenez said, well, this is a type of martial art where it doesn't matter how big you are. A small woman like you can take down a big man. And I'm like, wait, I love watching that stuff in the movies, so I could be like that. So that's what got me
You know,
excited about it.
I identify with that being a relatively small man. But with the scowl, so I've been picked on my whole life because I look tough, but I'm actually pretty small. And I identify with that, to be honest with you, is most of the people that have picked on me or fought me in my life are bigger, much bigger.
Well, and it's funny because we tend to think this is just a woman thing, right? But men face the same problems as women. I mean, one thing I'm learning as I've been doing the show is, gosh, we all face the same issues. They're just maybe different versions of it. And one reason I wanted to do martial arts was when I was in college, and I really don't even talk about this often, but there was this guy who liked me, but I liked his friend, and he got all upset. And it was at a party. I was not in any real danger, so to speak, but he pinned me up against the wall. And I just remember being so afraid, and I might have been, 20, I don't know, 20, probably 20. And he had me up against the wall. I had bruises on my wrists because he had held me that tight. But in retrospect, I froze, obviously, because I didn't expect it. And I thought to myself later on, as the years went by, I could have headbutted him. I could have kneed him in the balls. I mean, I had my legs free. I mean, what in the world? And I didn't like how that made me feel afraid about living life in the way that I wanted. And, I like to travel. I want to live my life in the way that I want. Not that I'm looking to get into trouble, but I just want to know that I can protect myself. And I know you can relate to this. You have two daughters who I tell you are like the like little badasses. I just love seeing them. They're adorable, and yet don't mess with them.
That's interesting. You mentioned fear, and for my entire childhood, getting in fights, I was afraid. And then I got into wrestling, and I was very, very good in wrestling. I went to UC Davis, Division I Pac-10 school in 1992 on the wrestling team that got me admitted into Davis. And yet, all of that contact and ability to defend myself, I still carried a lot of fear. I broke my neck, and my wrestling career was over, and I still wanted to do something. Got into jujitsu, more of the same. You just learn how to kill people or break arms. Then I got into kickboxing, and that taught me that getting hit really hurts. And so I still carried fear. And to be honest with you, having girls gave me more fear. Fear for them. Are they going to grow up like me and carry around all this fear and anxiety? And to be honest with you, the Krav Maga program changed that for me. It totally changed my mind about your ability to react. Simply knowing what you can do, I think, is the basis for dealing with fear.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly because I can't imagine having two daughters. So I had two sons, and we used to joke, my ex-husband and I, because we were like, all the, daughters' parents are like sitting up awake, and we're like, sleeping like babies. I mean, not that we didn't worry. I mean, you just don't worry about the same stuff. I worried about car accidents or, other things, but not them being attacked because my boys did Taekwondo. They were both black belts. So I knew that they could defend themselves, which is a great feeling. But having daughters in this day and age, it's not easy.
I'm worried more. The worry I have now is that my daughters won't stop, or that they'll try, if they're ever confronted physically, that they'll use it as an opportunity. So it's more
You know,
about,
I actually love that you said that. It's actually the fear that I have. I
I
had,
can see
you
that.
know, it will because I had gone out with this guy, a guy that I just, it was a first and last date. He wanted to walk out to some place in Del Mar, and we were walking through a dark alley. And he goes, "Are you comfortable walking through a dark alley?" And, I've been working on my life, speaking up for myself because yes, I'm trained in martial arts, but do I want to put myself in that situation? No. And I said, "No, I'm actually not." I go out we walk out the front door and go the lit way. And he goes, "Oh my God." He goes, "I'm surprised you say that because you know self-defense." I'm like, first of all, it's not self-defense, it's Krav Maga. And secondly, I'm not worried about me. I'm
Yeah.
worried about you. I was like, because if something happens, I'm already mad now. And again, it's a real thing. But what I love about martial arts is it teaches you so much discipline to channel that rage when it's acceptable and when it's necessary, but to pull back. But it can be a hard line. And I love that we're talking about this because it's a real thing.
Well, honestly, I do think that there's a double standard, maybe a triple standard. I don't know, but I do think that we should give people that, women or, children more leeway in their reaction than men. And, for all of time, men have had the balance of power. And I do think that a woman defending herself can go farther than a man simply because of that balance of power being off, or the perception of it being off in society. So I do think it's okay. So I train my daughters to make sure the threat to them is over before they turn their back.
Well, I would agree with that because the bottom line is as a woman, I would never be the aggressor to any man. So it's typically the other way around. A man is being the aggressor. And in that situation, I mean, it's not fair to be put in that situation. So, I would agree with that because of the fact that how many of the aggressors are women? I mean, there might be a few, but probably not many.
When I was a teacher, I substitute taught to put myself through my first graduate degree, and I was teaching junior high, and this 14-year-old girl was playing gangster rap, and it was inappropriate. It was a lot of foul language and things. I told her to turn it off. So she just walked up to me and punched me in the face, gave me a bloody nose. So I pushed her away from me, and she went and called her mom and the cops, and everybody came, and then we were in the principal's office, and the mom assaulted me, and it was a sad moment because the police arrested the mom and the daughter. And I will say that in some cases these days, the woman is the aggressor.
It's true. I mean, we are not infallible, but I would say that the odds are not
You're
that way.
right.
And I'm sorry that you had to experience that. And this is why martial arts is so important, because I feel like so much of what you guys teach us is really about the appropriate use of the skill that we have, which is just as important as learning the technique.
Yeah.
And to me, that is amazing. So at least now you don't have to worry about your daughters, having some issue with some guy. Most of them probably just don't want to even talk to them, I'm guessing, knowing that their dad is a martial artist and has won championships and has some black belts, and they're like, forget it. You guys are cute, but forget it. This
Well,
probably was your intention.
Liberty, my youngest, she's 13, turning 14 this year. Yesterday, she had a girl who's bigger than her. She was being mean to her and put her hand forcefully on my daughter's shoulder. And Liberty was upset yesterday telling me about it. And she said, Dad, I could have done this, I could have done that. And then she said, but it wasn't worth it because I know that that girl doesn't know what's coming for her. And so one day she'll realize that she was in danger at that moment. And that was kind of a moment for me as a dad because we get offended so easily these days. And yeah, physical touching crosses the line, but she wasn't threatened. She just was in a spot where she was angry. And anger is different than being threatened. And so I really have a lot of respect for her for not acting out of anger.
Well, that is such a beautiful story because she's only 13. And to understand the difference between that and not to retaliate when she could shows such amazing self control. And that's the thing I've noticed about both of your daughters. They're actually very mature. They don't seem to be, I mean, honestly, with Miley, I thought she was much older. She's what, 16?
She's 16, turning 17 in a few months.
Okay. So I thought she was much older. The way she runs that class and the maturity and even Liberty, I mean, she does seem much older. So, I mean, kudos to you because it can't be easy living in a household with so much estrogen, right? I had the
Well,
opposite. I had a lot of testosterone, two boys, a husband. Now I have a male dog. Then you've got the exact opposite situation.
well, I am an emotional person, so it kind of fits well. But it's funny how uh, you know, being a dad of two girls, I think takes a lot of courage because I'm not a girl. I don't have that identity. And so, my hand's shaking inside dealing with some of the things they go through, and their mom is just solid. She understands and knows it. So it's more about their mom and how fierce she is. And Tara, my wife, is a world champion martial artist as well. And
Oh, I didn't
so,
know that.
yeah, yeah. So there's
Wow. What
if
a,
I
what a family.
You know, on that, we are not extraordinary. We're not extraordinary for talent. We're very normal. We just put the work in, and that's the only difference I think is people who want something and go after it. And I like your podcast called Gloves Off because at what point do you just go for it and say that I'm doing this right now? And
Mhm.
when you're up at 10 p.m. trying to do 500 kicks to make sure that when you throw that kick, it's going to land no matter what your opponent does. I think that's maybe a little extreme, but that's what our family does. When we want something, we go do it to the best of our ability. And you hear a lot of people say that I gave it my best, I gave it my best. I can't tell you one point in my life where I can say that I hit my limit, that I gave something my best. I can say I did my best at that time, but I don't think we ever really hit our best because we're evolving as individuals. Our bodies are changing. You may have an injury or not. So I don't think there's such thing as a best, you know? And so putting in the time helps us to overcome that issue of not being the best, but being a better version than you were yesterday. And that's my family's approach to martial arts and goal achieving is how can I do something better and do I get enjoyment out of it? Because if you're not enjoying it, either it's necessary or you should get out of it. But that's our
100%.
philosophy.
100%. And, I would say that my son and I had this conversation the other day about people who, have trouble getting into some sort of fitness routine because they think they're supposed to do X, Y, and Z. So, for example, before I got into martial arts, I tried a lot of different exercises. I've always been active my whole life. Fitness is really important to me. Health and wellness is very important to me. However, as much as I've done a lot of other things, I was ready to quit certain things. I mean, I was running marathons. I'm sorry, not marathons, half marathons. So I was like, what? I gave myself more credit than I deserved. But, of course, I started with 5Ks and went up and then got to the half marathon. But after I did it, I was ready to stop. I mean, and I've definitely been consistent with an exercise routine or whatever, but I've never found anything like martial arts for me that I just love so much that I'll do it on my off time. Like I'm actually, whenever I leave town, I have a band with me and I'm doing something to improve my punches. And now you showed me a new way to improve my kicks. So I'm going to be working on that. So it's just, you're right. We're always a better version of ourselves. And there is no limit if you don't. I think some people have self-limiting beliefs and they put a limit on themselves and therefore they'll reach their limit. But I think maybe that's why you and I get along so well because, I don't see limits for myself. I've reinvented myself. I just keep going. There's no limit. Like I
I
feel
know
like I'll be 80 and doing who knows what.
we're talking about testing for mixed martial arts black belt in the Warrior Fight Club program in January and this coming
Exactly.
January. And that's going to be extremely, extremely tough. And, why are we doing it? I get asked that question all the time. And, are you some kind of like fight monger or what are you going to do with all this skill? And I heard Andy Norman, who basically started the Defense Lab and Evolution of Krav with Grandmaster Clark. I heard an interview with him and he said, I think it's actually written on the Warrior Martial Arts or Defense Lab page. And his response to that question of what are you going to do with all this skill? And his answer was really cool, and I encourage you guys to go read it. But what I took out of that was, I am doing it. Not that there's some kind of weird trophy or something to win, but the evolution of yourself and the evolution of your skill set is in itself something awesome. And I've been wanting to tell you this story. I've been waiting for this time with you.
Oh,
Liberty,
great.
my youngest, 77 days, and you can see it on my Facebook page, the post, but 77 days before World Championships in 2023, Liberty came up to me and said, Dad, I want to win. I want to win a gold medal at World Championships. And I said, okay, let's put the work in. We prayed about it and got to work. And almost every day we trained and went into the studio and we trained the basics and we did a lot of it. We went through injury and fatigue and I didn't want to go train. And she would wake me up and said, Dad, it's time. And then threw a few tricks in here. And then 77 days later, she won 4 gold medals at Taekwondo World Championships. And then the fighting she did the day after for opening season was just astounding. And she had this focus. But after she won, I said, hey, how does it feel? You put in all this time, all this effort. It became the thing in your life that you focused on and you did it. You climbed that mountain and you grabbed it. She said, Dad, winning is cool, but training was better. That's cool.
Wow. I love that. And it's so inspiring to hear that. And I mean, it's just, I don't know. I really don't even have words. And one of the things I'm thinking is it would be fun to have your daughters on the show.
It would be
It's
great.
such a
They would
cool,
love it.
such a cool Such a cool dynamic amongst you guys, because like in one moment you're just, you're Mr. Hale, you're the instructor, and then next minute they'll be like, Dad. It's so cute to
I
watch.
know. Yeah, Liberty and I, my youngest, we get into what we call real fights at home, and I'll scale up my attacks on her based on her reaction and how hard she hits me, and then we hit a limit and we stop. But we've hurt each other, we've bruised each other, and I mean, she gave me a left hook to the jaw that dislocated my jaw and couldn't chew right for a week, and she did a reverse side kick and bruised my ribs and dislocated a rib, and it's so cool to have that kind of contact because there is nobody even close to her age who can take the beating that she's given me. So that's the
Yeah.
interesting part about that contact, right? Is she's a young woman in a world that is increasingly more hostile and
Hmm.
for no good reason. And if you're not for us, you're against us, kind of a thing. And my daughters are so at peace in their generation that I don't lose sleep at night.
Well, that is so important. And again, another reason that I started this show, the tagline is keeping the fight where it belongs. And to me, that's really important because it stands for a lot. Because I do see that in this world, we are fighting against the wrong things sometimes, maybe we're fighting against each other, but that's not really where the fight is. Maybe it's somewhere else. And these are the situations I want to bring to light so that, because I think that when we have a better understanding of one another, other cultures, types of families, types of, just understanding each other changes everything. And I think that we spend less time trying to understand each other than we're trying to do. I guess we just get busy with life. But if we take that moment to understand each other, because in all honesty, somebody may look at your family and think, oh my God, that's this, that's that. But you know what? There's no this or that. There is, this is what works for us, and this is the type of family that we are. Frankly, it doesn't have to be molded into some predetermined way. I have two sons. My older son and I, we have all kinds of conversations. People are like, you talk about that with your son? And I'm like, we don't talk about weird things, but we have very open discussions about life, relationships, life goals. I don't know anything. And I don't want things to be off the table. He's 25 years old. It's not like he's a child. And even when he was, I knew that there was times to bring these conversations to the table. And it sounds like you haven't sheltered your daughters all that much either. They need to know what the world is like.
Yeah, my children are dangerous thinkers. And I caught myself just now and I said my children because that's not even like the right term anymore. They are my children, but my daughters are dangerous thinkers. And so they challenge themselves in everything. And just last night, Miley came out of her room at 11 p.m. and had this philosophical question, and we just started working through it, and I didn't have an answer. It was just really cool to hear her thinking about something that most adults don't want to even explore because it's existential or something. And have you ever had someone tell you that, oh, you're doing too much? You need to like simplify. You're doing too much. You ever heard that?
All my life. I mean, everybody always thinks I'm doing too much. They feel I've had people tell me I've reached the limit, the epitome of my life as a surgeon, as a mother, as a business owner. And they're like, what more could you possibly want? I'm like, I want a whole lot of things more. Like, don't
Yeah,
tell me where my limits are. Thank you very much. So, yeah, totally know what you're coming from.
I get that once a month at least, and if
Hmm.
friends or family or people and I think about that and that with a lot of things that you do or a lot of goal searching or just giving it whatever you can and whatever you're doing, there's a lot of anxiety, a lot of fatigue, a lot of pressure. And so I think I ask myself that question a lot, are they right? If enough people are telling me that this is their perspective, does that make it true? No, it doesn't make it true. It makes it true for them, but not for me. And so I do my best to not see the world through someone else's lens because the moment
Right.
I do, I see it through their experiences and not mine, and what I'm trying to do for my daughters is give them more stories about life than when they get to college or whatever it is they choose to do next in life. I want them to have such a diverse platform of crazy, intense, great, challenging, scary experiences, so that when they're out there doing their own thing, they're just going to call me and say, "Hey, Dad, check this out." And it's not going to be surprising because of all the stuff we've already tried to do or have done or whatever, and we're not Harvard minded or gold star minded or trophy minded, or, we don't move from one, be the best in this to that. Um, but we don't like going slow. And I think that characterizes my daughters.
Hmm.
What the one thing they can't do well is be lazy sitting around on a weekend when it's raining. And that kind
Right.
of drives me nuts because I like taking naps, but
Right.
they just
But
go, go, go.
it's great. It's really all about understanding yourself and what makes you happy. And that's why I wrote about this in my book as well. It's just, I don't like when people tell me what my limits are and what I should be doing and what I shouldn't. It's for each human being to decide what's for them. Not everybody has the same purpose. Not everybody has the same desires. And all of that is okay, which is why I think everything should come from a place of understanding. You can do you while I do me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're not mutually exclusive.
I don't mind the criticism, um, because it makes me stop and think. And sometimes when there's a lot of criticism, that can be a storm of direction, right? Where something's happening in your life and you're kind of on a path that may not be sustainable. And sometimes the criticism gets you back on track, and that can be good.
Mhm.
And I like to think of life coming in threes, either a storm of protection, a storm of direction, or a storm of correction. So when things are crazy and not going well, you're either being protected from something, you're being corrected onto a different path, or it's a storm giving you greater direction, like Miley breaking her wrist. She automatically cannot go to Victory World Championships with Master Jimenez and represent Fight Club in June. She cannot compete in Taekwondo World Championships in July. She can't hit heavy bag until September because of the hardware in her wrist. And so what that's done is freed her up to actually pursue this other thing in her life, which is motorsports. So she's still focusing on martial arts, but she can't have that full contact. And that to me is a storm of direction. It's not protecting her from martial arts. She wasn't being corrected from the wrong path, but it gave her direction that I'm going to put my energy into this path right now until I can get back on track. So
I
that's how
love
I
that.
see things.
I love it. I really do love it. So tell me, I want to actually talk about your degree and your like other work too, and then in this farming. I'm like, it's like this is to me that's just such a intriguing part of the story because, well, first of all, I didn't really even know about it. I mean, you had made some references, but we're always busy when it's time for class, so I don't really get a chance to ask about it. So tell me about your archaeology and all of this stuff and how you got into it, what you like about it, anything that you're interested in sharing with the audience.
I became an archaeologist because I had always been interested in archaeology and interesting things that no one really has the answer for. So I went to Davis, like I said before, and I had fixed a car for a professor so it would pass smog. All I did was clean the carburetor, but I had no idea how famous this guy was. So he asked me later, "Can you go to archaeology field school this summer?" And I said, "No, I got to save up." It was probably almost $2,000 back then in 1994. I couldn't afford it. And he said, "Oh, that's okay. You just go. Plan on going. I got you." So we covered the fee. That's how I got into it. So I worked my butt off at that field school just to honor that thing he did for me. And I know I got a lot of eyes looking at me for that. Why is this guy so special? Because I'm not that gifted, academically. I'm a slow reader. Actually scored very low on reading comprehension for the SATs and the graduate record exam. But I write for a living for my PhD. So
Hmm.
it's interesting going through all of that and not having all of the gifts most people have that get into those elite programs. So I went from my master's degree to Sac State, and that was this amazing program where you're in the field and taking class. So that really launched my career. At about 2005, my wife and I decided we needed a change. So we went back to grad school. Tara wanted to go into dental hygiene, and I wanted to go back for a PhD, so I called that same professor, and he let me in. And that's how it happened. That's how I, became who I am and got my doctorate. And again, I worked my butt off because he did this for me. To be clear, I'm not an idiot. I'm well trained, so I overcome my inadequacies with academics by just not working hard, but really trying to understand everything and simplifying my vocabulary and trying looking up words. And so you might read something as a fast reader and understand it right away. I'll have to read it 5 times, but by the time I'm done, I own it. I understand everything about it, and I could see the inadequacies and flaws in that study. So that's how I'm well trained. I have been given a lot of hands up in life, and I think that comes naturally when you're nice to people and you work hard. People want to work with you. And so I do the same thing. I provide internships to people and that are not even close to being an archaeologist, and send them back to school and train them in house. And now several of those people are full-time employees with me at Dudek. And so there's all sorts of things that people do for each other. So I don't want to say, oh, I pulled myself up by my bootstraps. Not really. I just took advantage of doors that were open to me and got to work. And
Well, as you
now,
should, really. Why shouldn't you? And it really brings up a great topic that you're talking about. I feel that in this country, and I don't know if all countries do this, I can only speak for this country, we tend to put intelligence into a box. So if you are not a, great SAT test taker, whatever, you don't make scores. So now automatically that person's smarter than you because they scored X on the SAT and blah, blah, blah. Well, I have to tell you, I was never a great standardized test taker either. My younger sister would blow tests away. And I was like, I don't think I'm not intelligent, but I don't tend to do great on these kind of tests. So case in point, if it was a multiple choice question, I would tend to do worse on tests that have multiple choice. But when it was something that was like long answer or essays or like, for example, biochemistry, when I had to write out all the cycles and everything, I would kick butt on those kind of tests. So I was like, well, this is weird because that's not what other people do. Like everybody hates those. And I'm like, yes, let me start writing out Krebs cycle and this and that and gluconeogenesis. And I was like, oh, this is thrilling. So,
that's
but
me too.
yeah. So we may just have a different type of brain. And like you say, you found the inadequacies in all the studies. That's how my brain works. I don't like just really memorizing things and not understanding it, but I love taking all kinds of information that I've accumulated from various aspects of my life and putting it together in a completely different way and repackaging it, repurposing it. And that's what I love doing. I do that on my coaching programs, and I do it in all aspects of life, in my video content. So we all have different brains. And I think that this is such a great talking point because we can't decide somebody is intelligent, not intelligent. We just all have different types of intelligence. We have our unique abilities. And I don't know, I think our educational system really needs to shift, to be honest with you.
I 100% agree with that. George Costanza on Seinfeld said something that is super funny, but is kind of true. He was trying to beat a lie detector, or he was trying to teach Jerry Seinfeld how to beat a lie detector, and he said, "It's not a lie if you believe it." And it's just the funniest thing ever. But isn't that true that if you go into something with confidence, you're going to be more able to pivot and learn as you go? And so the first time I took the GREs, I did terrible on that part. Did great on the writing, 6 out of 6. Great on the math, but not so great on the reading comprehension. I'm a slow reader. Second
Mhm.
time I took it, I did better. So, we're always bettering ourselves. And what I want my kids to know, and other people that look to me or work under me, is you're not me. You're going to have a different path, but there's absolutely nothing super special about getting to that pinnacle of academia. Your path just might be different. I have so many friends that went from undergrad straight into a PhD program. Good for them. That was not my path. I spent 4 years in a master's degree program and 6 years working in the industry before I went back. And that was my path. And I got turned down for the PhD program at a bunch of schools before I applied for my master's degree. So if you really want something, you just go get it. And you just be smart about the experiences in front of you. But I love my job. I don't know how else to say it. I love the company I work for because they let me be me. But really, I love being an archaeologist, and that's not all about digging things up. It's about, people and understanding human ecology and how the world works from a perspective that's really ripped away from daily life. You're finding artifacts in the ground, you're making inferences based on knowledge and maybe some analogy from ethnography. But by and large, when you're looking at something in North America that's 7,000 years old, there's not a lot of good analogies or parallels in modern life. So you have to look at the economy from the things that people threw away and make inferences about that. And I think that's what draws me to it. Is I'm not a perfectionist. Um, I'm a big picture guy, and archaeology gives me the ability to be a big picture guy. So that's why I got into it.
Well, and it seems to resonate well with who you are. You can be authentically yourself, which is, I think, a huge thing in a career. So for me, as much as I did like the academics of medicine and the intricacies of surgery and all that, there was just a part of me that I felt like I couldn't, well, not even just a part of me, pretty much most of me that I couldn't express. I felt like I had to be a certain way. And I just felt like I was putting on masks every day just to be what I needed to be. That wears on you after a while. So I think it's wonderful that you're in a position at work where you love it because you can be you and that's acceptable. And you get to explore all these cool things. I've always thought archaeology was super cool. So,
Yeah,
and
I always thought medicine was super cool.
well, we always think it's, and medicine is super cool. I mean, I can't say that I did not enjoy the thrill of doing all those surgeries. And I really did enjoy that. I like hands-on things. So that's the idea of going into a human body and fixing something that's wrong is still just exciting. But the medical industry has just changed. I'm more into holistic stuff these days, and we did that's not condoned. So it became harder and harder for me to stay in it because I know that we can do a lot more with holistic treatments and with non-pharmaceutical medications. So I'm just not aligned with that anymore. So it just forced me sort of to choose a different path. But I'm actually curious now. I want to talk a little bit about, your farming and your agave that your whole family's involved in that, from what I understand, right?
Yeah, yeah, we
So where do you guys find the time to do that and amongst everything else? I don't even know, but you clearly do.
you know to answer that directly, it's you just fit it in, and it's mostly weekend work. We sold a house and got some money out of it, moved to Fallbrook, bought a 900 square foot house that no one would buy on 6 acres. And our old neighbor's a nursery broker, and he said, "Hey, why don't we put the land to work for you?" And so we started growing agave americanas, which makes mezcal, a big, broad, blue leaf plant. And they're brutal. I don't recommend it. But that got us the nursery business. And we started buying clones from a tissue lab, and we're very good. Rancho Tissue Culture sell us clones, and then we look for agaves that are bolting. And agaves make seeds, and then they make clones, genetic clones. And some of these plants have 5 or 6 thousand babies that literally drop off and root in the ground and make more agaves. That's how these plants propagate. And so we started picking things off the landscape and paying people $40 to chop down their agave stock. And that's how we got going. And then started buying clones. And we almost lost our business when COVID hit because we were selling exclusively to other nurseries. And my wife is just an unbelievable entrepreneur. And she didn't take no for an answer and got us a Home Depot contract. And so it's really her business. And um, we sell our plants, 90% of our plants to Home Depot in 1, 2, and 5 gallon pots. That's how we got into it. Yeah.
That is really cool. And I love that. It's so nice to have the support, when you're in entrepreneurship. And I didn't know I was an entrepreneur, and so many women are. So a lot of what I do is coaching women to be their best version of themselves, own their entrepreneurial spirit if that's what they want to do, because many of us are afraid to take that leap. One of the big things that kept me in medicine was the fact that I was in my own practice and I got to design it the way that I wanted. And that was very intriguing to me. But that business acumen and knowledge meant that I could literally pivot and create a new business at any given time if I needed to, because the same skills apply, which is amazing. So, you got to love that she just didn't take no for an answer. And in a time where most people were having issues and problems, she found a road and took it. That's amazing.
Yeah, it is pretty amazing. It was hard for us as well at that time, looking at all of our hard work potentially going down the drain. And she made it happen, and we would have lost the farm. That sounds funny to say,
Yeah,
or
you're about to
bought
lose
the
the
farm,
farm.
whatever it is. But she made that happen. I'm just the brute force labor, to be honest with you. And we have our own brand. It's called Desert Highlights. We have our own special pots that are colorful. And this guy for Home Depot, Brian Parker, he's like the Western United States buyer or something like that. And he's just been such a blessing working with Tara. And women in business, in the nursery business, are not treated well. And
Oh,
it's
interesting.
it's shocking how poorly women are treated. And she just doesn't care. She just goes forward and makes the relationships happen, and deals with people. So it's pretty interesting to watch her work. It's pretty cool.
Wow. That is really cool. Well, I could say I only met your wife the one time when we were at the warrior training in January, but you could really see there's something about the spirit within all of you that I don't even know if I have a real word to describe it, but it's almost like that force precedes you. I don't know how to explain that in a better way, but there is this energy and it's a cohesive energy, even though you guys are all individuals within a family. What I sensed was every person in your family has the freedom to express their individuality, but then you also share a lot of common thread and a lot of things that you enjoy. I love that your daughters aren't into the traditional, girl things, uh, because I can really relate to that. I mean, growing up, I think I was expected to be, and I was born in, I was a child of the '70s, so girls like me, I was a little bit of a tomboy, but yet I looked very feminine, and people were really confused. And as I got older, I still liked the things that quote unquote boys do. So cars and martial arts and all these things, surgery.
It's going to be a funny year because, Miley trying to kick her motorsports career off, and Liberty actually, she's the most clinical fighter, but she got hooked up with Miss Ashley Clement, who's Miss Miami right now, who's a fourth degree in the Warrior Traditional Martial Arts program, and
Very
and she's helping Liberty get into the pageant business, and Liberty's kind of a diva, so so Liberty's
that
yeah.
I think I met her at when I was there. I do remember her. Though I think that would be very fitting. And what I love about that is that, you know, you can be both. It doesn't matter if this is on this side of the spectrum and that's that side of the spectrum. Because again, I'm the same way. I love dressing up. I love purses and shoes and fashion. I love all that. So I love being a girly girl. But then I go to Krav Maga and I leave all that somewhere else and then
Yeah,
it's Krav
exactly.
time.
Exactly, and that's Liberty. There's a lot of gender dysphoria in the world today, and there's a lot of different, reasons for that. And Liberty has a lot of friends at school that identify not in non-traditional ways in their gender, and Liberty does not. She's not. She doesn't lack confidence in being a girl, and I want my children to be happy and confident. That's it.
Mhm.
And so, whatever path they're going down, that's what I want for them. And so it was a little shocking for me to see her. Um, wasn't the path I would have chosen, pageant stuff or whatever. And she wants to do it, and I'll support it. It's just a little weird for me. I didn't think I was raising a pageant girl, and here we go. So it's
Well,
a
think
little
about it. Like
uncomfortable.
But you know what? Maybe that whole pageant girl mentality, because I know what you're talking about. I mean, my sister did some pageants when we were young. I was told I wasn't cute enough, so I was like, okay. I was like, and I was so it's just funny because I grew up thinking I was stupid and ugly and all these things, and it's taken me a long time to like really get over those, all those conditionings that I grew up with. And
Yeah.
but again, like that pageant industry, I believe it's changed a lot from what I saw when my sister was doing it and to now. And you know what I love is that I believe that your daughter will redefine it in a completely different way, along with it was Ashley, right?
Yeah.
They're both martial artists, and I feel like they will show something different within the pageant industry to these young girls, so probably really have an opportunity to affect the way girls think. So
It would probably be
no.
interesting for you to talk to Ashley on this podcast because I heard a little bit about it from her, and she has a nonprofit for girls in self-defense, and so she's got this whole other thing going in her life that is a platform for young women, and it fits the gloves off mentality, and she's very non-standard as well, has the
Yeah.
look or whatever, but then throws down, and yeah, I just both my daughters are. Growing up in a world that doesn't know what it wants.
Right. Well, I think the world right now is in a very confusing space where there's, I don't know, it's confused. I guess that's the best way I can say it. I really don't even know how to describe it. But
But
I think,
that's the way I think about it is I don't know how any other way to raise my girls, and I'll give them a strong foundation that they can then criticize and deconstruct all they want. But at least there's definition, and that's what we're trying to give them is a childhood and an adolescent period where they can have a firm foundation, whether they want to break that foundation down later or not. It's not
Mhm.
a hostile foundation, it's just knowable and definable. And I think that that's what the world needs is people who know who they are and aren't confrontational about it. Okay, that's great. And let's go forward like that because the interpersonal differences only matter when you fight about it.
Mhm.
So it's interesting to see these girls already challenging things that we instilled in them because we grew up in a different generation, and
Right.
so they see the world differently in ways, and it's always a little shocking to me to see those fissures forming and how they're dealing with them in their own life.
Well, it's true. I think that a lot of things need to change. And really, so much of my life in these last 10 years or so has been about deconstructing what society has taught me about not only myself, my culture, what kind of life I'm supposed to live, and all of that. So I love that the new generation doesn't see it that way.
Yeah,
I mean, I see it already in my children. They have a more of a sense of freedom and individuality that I believe that we were able to grow up with. I felt like we had to conform, and I did in many ways, and then I started to do everything opposite.
yeah. I grew up with no money. We weren't poor. I think that's a state of mind. We just didn't have any money. My dad worked his butt off, working 3 jobs. My mom worked. They both went to school, but we didn't have any money until I left for college. In fact, I got poor people's grants going to college as an undergrad, and it's not a badge of honor, but if I could compare it to this generation of kids, it's that they're like poor kids. They just don't value the same things that rich people value. And now I'm not poor anymore by far, and I still have those same values as a kid. And so kids today that are rejecting traditional financial structures or paths to financial stability, they're rejecting a lot of that stuff by and large. And I think they're just acting like poor kids because if you don't place your value in a monetary currency or a system that sets financial goals, I'm not criticizing those goals, but if you don't have the ability to invest in those, you don't have those goals until you get to a place where you can invest, right? If you're super poor and
Mhm.
all you have is $40, you're not going to save it. And so I think
Mm-mm.
that characterizes this generation with everything that's money and not money is it's not an anti-materialist perspective. I think it's
Mhm.
just they've devalued things that previous generations valued. And I think that's how I understand the freedom you mentioned, is that they just don't care about the same things we did. They do care. And I think that's the false criticism of this generation, or the millennials or the ones after them, is they just don't care about this or don't care. They do. They just do it differently. They do work hard. They just work hard differently. It's just a different way of being social. And I don't really understand it. I don't function well in it, but it's not my job to. And so I don't raise my kids teaching them about very strict traditional values. They got to figure that out on their own.
Well, it's so true. And also, one of the things that came up for me while you were saying that is that I feel that the younger generations don't idolize money. It's not it's a tool. Somebody said this, and I don't know, if they got it from somewhere else, but said money is a tool, not an idol. And,
Yeah.
I would say that I grew up with money being kind of idolized. It's hard to get, it's hard to come by. You got to really work really hard. And not that those things aren't necessarily true, but I think there's a different way of looking at it. I just realized at some point that money wasn't supposed to be idolized and it's just a tool. My bigger goal, I mean, when I was, there was a time in my life that I had all those beliefs, and then I just changed my thinking, realizing that my bigger goal in life is to really serve humanity in what way is unique to me. And it sounds like you guys are doing exactly the same thing. And I think it's just cool how inevitably I get the right people on the show. Sometimes I don't know that much about their story, but it's like this hunch and this instinct that tells me there's more to this story. I got to dig deeper and find it out. And I don't like to know that much about the story. I like to know a few bullet points, but to me, the fun is in the discovery, kind of like an archaeology of that human being.
Yeah, that's for sure true. All of that I agree with. It's money's money's not everything, but it's nice to have, right? So
100%.
so
You
that
need
there
it.
is
You
some,
can't live without it.
you need some, something. Otherwise, other people are paying for your experiences. So there's that whole line. But yeah, I
Yeah.
agree with that.
Yeah.
It's
No,
nice to be sitting here with internet talking to you and having a podcast and having a
right.
shirt that's not stained and stuff like that. And money provides those things. So there is a
100.
minimum level. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have to say. And, I would say that I love this opportunity. I've gotten to know you on a whole different level. And to me, this is what the show is about too, just people understanding each other. And the more we share on the show about different humans, how they experience life, what their values are, I feel it will bring greater understanding. And even last week I had a guest from Germany. So what I want to have more international guests on the show because they live differently. And I think the more we understand how we are different, so to speak, but at the core, very, very similar. We just have to keep that in mind.
I agree. I appreciate you having me on here, and I would just encourage you to take us up on the offer to pit crew for Miley in January at King of the Hammers 2025, and
Oh, I
it's going to
would
be
love that.
it's
I
going to
would
be
definitely love that.
mate. We're going to be on the Bent Motorsports team, and they're out of San Marcos, and Miley is just all in, and it's really cool to see her, all in. And when you first came to the studio, she's like, "Dad, she's driving a Porsche." And I was like, yeah, it's pretty cool. Why don't you go ask her for a ride or whatever? And because I don't know if you've seen her Instagram, but she's all in on Porsche. And
Okay. All right. Well, you know what? One day when you guys are, need a break from the girls, I'll take them out and do some fun stuff with them. There you go. That's my offer.
I've
But I
really
have to
enjoyed
say,
having you.
what was that? Sorry, I didn't
I've
hear
really
it.
enjoyed having you in the studio. It's been fun. And the girls, every time you're in class, Liberty's just like, I love working out with Miss Sundar.
I love that. No, they're great. They're great kids and just really just a breath of sunshine for me because I only had boys. So it's just so refreshing to be around these, badass young girls. And how many female black belts do we have in that class? I mean, that's awesome right there, So that's a
Yeah,
great feeling.
yeah. And they're all
But,
women.
I have I love it. I love it. So you are just an inspiration. You have been in the short time that I've known you, have been such an inspiration to me. I can't be more grateful to have arrived in your studio to finalize my black belt training and to have, gone through the training and my black belt with you guys. So for any of you guys out there who are interested in martial arts, you guys do Taekwondo, Fight Club, Krav Maga, and it's Success Martial Arts in Bonsall. How can everybody get a hold of you?
Internet's the easiest way. If you want to
Perfect.
look it up on Facebook, it's just Success Martial Arts. And if you want to get in contact with me, just look me up on Facebook and submit a friend request, or look for me at Success Martial Arts.
Well, fabulous. Thank you so much for being on the show today, and enjoy the rest of your evening.